I want to talk about some international news, believe it or not. I want to talk about an Italian court order that has come down in a case of a homeless man who was sentenced to 6 months in prison and a substantive fine for someone who doesn't have work. An Italian court, the highest court of appeals, has ruled that it's okay for theft as long as it's by poor people. This is the essence of the ruling. So the 6 months, uh, the defense attorneys appealed because they felt like 6 months was exorbitant for a homeless man from the Ukraine who was caught trying to take about $4.70 worth of cheese. He got sentenced to 6 months, and so they filed an appeal so that they can at least get the sentence reduced. Their expectation was that the sentence would simply be reduced, perhaps with time served. However, uh, they got a lot more than what they asked for. They got a ruling that essentially said that because this homeless person had a very essential need, and because what he stole was commensurate to his hunger, that it's not appropriate for the Italian officials to imprison this man and to charge him with a fine of 100 euros because his crime was a crime of desperation and a crime of need. I want to unpack this a little bit more because, well, two things. Number one, that would never, ever, on any given day of life, happen in the United States of America. Ever. Can you imagine the outrage that would sweep, the mass hysteria that would sweep the United States of America if for one moment um, people believed that homeless people could now legally get away with stealing food because what they stole was actually representative of what they needed? That would never happen in the United States of America. That's number one. But number two, in more context of this story, so unlike the United States of America, this ruling by the appellate court does not have the force of precedent on lower courts. So this decision is not quite in isolation, but it doesn't have as far-reaching ramifications as one would expect from an appellate court decision here in the United States. So there's not a one-to-one relationship with how it's structured here in the United States compared to that of Italy. But it really does speak to this principle that they outlined as a reason or a justification. There's an Italian legal doctrine. I'm going to massacre this Latin, but what the hell? I'm going to try it anyway. Ad impossibilia nemo tenetur. I massacred it. I know I did. But it translates and says, no one is expected to do the impossible. And so, based on this doctrine, the official ruling hasn't come down, but legal scholars in Italy have said, based on this doctrine that no one is expected to do the impossible, this homeless man has had his 6 month, 100 euro fine overturned, essentially saying that it is impossible to expect someone who does not have access to food to continue to live without food. And because we cannot expect the impossible, we cannot then charge them for doing what is only sensible, which is if I don't have access to food and I don't have money for food, I have to survive. It's impossible for me to survive without it. And so he is within his right to steal to survive. A fascinating story out of Italy. There are, of course, people who oppose this. The opposition has said in America, that would be blasphemy. And here as well, some conformists will talk about, I love this line, a legitimization, I would say a legitimatization, but it's legitimization of the proletarian expropriation. let me say it again so I could be more precise. Right. So it's the legitimization of the proletarian expropriation. In other words, they're basically saying we are making it legal for the poor to steal from the bourgeois. Class warfare jargon. They, of course, this is a class issue. This is a economics issue. But I just think it's brilliant that the courts had the nerve and the courage to actually rule on something that is so contradictory to everything our capitalistic system especially, has ingrained in our heads. Because I think even right now, most people are thinking this really doesn't make sense to codify stealing so long as what you steal is commensurate to what you need, and what you need is crucial for survival. So I want to keep an eye on that story, because there's going to be the actual explanation coming down soon, and I thought that was a very interesting story.